My father never believed in me until I inherited his business and uncovered the secret life he thought he'd buried forever. The day of his funeral, the sky refused to mourn. It was one of those stubbornly sunny afternoons in late spring, when everything is in bloom and nothing feels right. I remember standing by the casket, watching faces I barely recognized nod solemnly, whispering condolences with the sincerity of a cocktail napkin. My name is Daniel Rhodes. I'm 36 years old, and for most of my life, I was the family disappointment. Not the rebel, not the black sheep, just the quiet shadow trailing behind a father who believed in hustle, hard cash, and control. He built Rhodes Mechanical from nothing, or so he claimed. A blue-collar empire of HVAC contracts, public works, private installs, oil rig systems, whatever paid well and came with a hard hat. He wore his legacy like a crown. I was expected to be his prince, but I never wanted the crown. I wanted to write. I studied literature, not logistics. I spent my 20s editing ad copy and tutoring undergrads. My father called it playing with pencils. Said I was wasting potential. Said I was too soft, too naive to ever handle real business. He told my mother once, I overheard him, late at night, that I'd probably end up teaching poetry at a community college and borrowing gas money by 40. I never forgot that, especially not when I published my first book and mailed him a signed copy. He never opened it. I found it in his garage 2 years later, still in the envelope, covered in sawdust and spider webs. But death has a way of handing out strange inheritances. When the will was read, nobody expected what came next. Not my brother Greg, who ran the operations team and thought the company would default to him. Not my Aunt Linda, who once tried to convince my father to liquidate and move to Florida. And certainly not me. To my son, Daniel, I leave the controlling interest of Rhodes Mechanical in trust for 5 years, during which he must remain CEO and meet all operational thresholds, or the company will pass to Gregory. It felt like a punishment disguised as a gift. Greg's jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth would shatter. My mother blinked, like she'd just realized she was still alive. The lawyer looked at me with pity. Me? I stared at the carpet, stunned silent. I hadn't spoken to my father in over a year before he died. He had an aneurysm in his sleep. No warnings. Just gone. And now here I was, holding the keys to the empire he never thought I was strong enough to touch. At first, I thought it was some cruel twist. A final test. One last chance for him to prove me wrong or watch me fail. But then I found the red file. Locked in his office safe. Labeled only Harrow. That's when everything changed. Because what I uncovered inside that file didn't just shatter everything I thought I knew about my father, it made me question if I had ever known him at all. I didn't open the file right away. It sat on the corner of my father's old oak desk like a sleeping bomb. The word Harrow was handwritten in thick, red ink, all caps, underlined twice. No logo, no date, just that name. It didn't match any contractor, vendor, or project folder I'd seen during the handover. And I'd been combing through a mountain of ledgers and old invoices for 2 weeks, trying to figure out how to keep the damn company afloat. Rhodes Mechanical looked solid on paper. But underneath the balance sheets, I saw the hairline fractures, debts restructured quietly, bids submitted well below margin, major projects pending final inspections that kept getting delayed. It was Greg who let it slip, after a few scotches at a board meeting gone stale. He was hiding something, he muttered. Always working late those last few years. Said it was compliance paperwork. Then I found him burning old records in the shop furnace. Greg never trusted me. Still doesn't. But that moment, the way his voice dipped, the way he reached for another drink without looking at me, that was real. And it made me open the file. Inside were 4 things. A black and white photograph. Grainy. Taken from a distance. A man and a child standing beside an old industrial building with the letters HMC barely visible in the background. The man looked vaguely familiar, stocky, military haircut, sunglasses. The kid was maybe 7 or 8. Could have been me. Could have been Greg. A handwritten letter, and signed, on Rhodes Mechanical letterhead. It started mid-thought, like a confession interrupted. I did what I had to. Harrow was never supposed to come back. We buried it in '98. The NDA was airtight. But if the feds sniff around again, tell Linda to deny everything. She doesn't know. Not really. A key. Small. Rusted. With AR-5 etched into one side. A check stub payable to a name I didn't recognize. J. Harrow. The amount? $10,000. Issued quarterly. Last cleared just 2 months before Dad died. I sat there in his office, surrounded by blueprints and machinery schematics and the faint scent of old tobacco, trying to make sense of it all. Harrow. HMC. Buried in 98. A secret account? A payoff? It didn't make sense. But it felt dangerous. The kind of secret that's locked in a safe for a reason. The kind my father never trusted anyone to know. Not even Greg. I spent the next 2 days chasing down dead ends. No Harrow in the company archives. No vendor matches. The photo had no timestamp, and the check was issued from a now-defunct credit union my father used back in the 90s. Then I called Aunt Linda. She picked up on the third ring. "Daniel," she said, her voice warm but wary. "How's the kingdom? Have you ever heard of something called Harrow?" I asked. "Or HMC?" The line went dead silent. Then she exhaled slowly. "I hoped you'd never ask that." I drove out to her house that night. She lived alone now, in a white ranch style just off the main road near Lakeview. The porch light was already on when I arrived, and she was waiting with 2 cups of tea and a folder of her own. Linda never liked my father's world. Said he traded in shadows. Said there was always a cost to climbing fast. "Your father got involved with something after the union disputes in 95, she said. "Something off the books. Industrial disposal contracts for Harrow Materials Company, that's HMC. They operated out of state. No public listing, no audits." She slid her folder toward me. Inside were 2 news clippings. One was a local paper from 1998. "Chemical fire at abandoned site outside Galloway. Investigation ongoing. No arrests. No official cause. Just vague mentions of toxic residue and sealed land." The second was a federal environmental report. Redacted. But one line stood out. "Concerns over illicit dumping by subcontractors linked to Rhodes Mechanical and Harrow Materials Company. Further inquiry stalled due to lack of jurisdiction." My stomach sank. "What did they dump?" I asked. Linda looked at me, eyes tired. "Whatever they were paid to take away. And some of it, Daniel, was never supposed to exist." Suddenly, I saw it all in a different light. The legacy, the bravado, the paranoia. The trust clause in the will, not a test, but a firewall. My father hadn't left me the business out of redemption. He'd left it to hide something. And I was now the keeper of a secret that could burn the whole thing down. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, the red file spread open beside Aunt Linda's documents, while the clock mocked me with every passing minute. The secrets were growing teeth. Every detail felt like it was leading somewhere darker, somewhere I wasn't prepared to go. I kept staring at that name. J. Harrow. Who the hell was he? At 3:14 a.m., I dug out one of my father's old leather-bound ledgers from a box in the garage. The kind he kept before the company went digital. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe a note in the margin, a scribbled reference, anything. Instead, I found a page near the back, partially torn, with 2 words scrawled in pencil. "He's still alive." That's when I decided I had to find him a Harrow. By the end of the week, I'd hired a private investigator. The guy's name was Marcus Callan, former cop, now semi-retired and driven mostly by curiosity and debt. I handed him the name, the check stub, and a photocopy of the photo. He stared at it all for about 5 seconds before saying, "This is going to take me places I probably won't enjoy, isn't it?" "You and me both," I muttered. In the meantime, I tried to play CEO. I showed up at the job sites, met with suppliers, even sat in on a safety audit. Greg glared at me like I was a tourist with a clipboard. He kept calling meetings I wasn't invited to, looping in the board, sending snide memos with phrases like "Daniel's current limitations" and "pending decisions under probation." He thought I'd buckle, that I'd fade out like a puff of smoke and let him take the reins. But Greg didn't know about the red file. He didn't know I'd already started cleaning out the skeletons. That same week, something strange happened. One of the foremen, a guy named Terry, who'd been with the company for 20 years, cornered me behind the storage yard. "You're Dan, right? The writer?" I nodded, wary. He scratched his head. "You're old man. He ever tell you about Galloway?" The hairs on my arms stood up. "What about it?" Terry glanced around. There was a site. Back in 98. They said it was a test run. Just one job. "We dumped these sealed barrels, big ones, heavy, no labels, just numbers." "What kind of numbers?" He shook his head. "Didn't ask. Wasn't supposed to." But a month later, one of our guys, Jimmy Renner, got sick. Then disappeared. "Your dad gave us all a bonus and said the job was classified." My stomach turned. "Did you report it?" He laughed bitterly. "To who?" "They made us sign NDAs. We thought it was government work. And now," He hesitated. Now I'm wondering if we were used. 2 days later, Marcus called. Found him, he said simply. J. Harrow. Real name, Joseph Harowitz. He's living under an alias in a cabin up north, near Bear Lake. What's he doing? Fishing. Hiding. Waiting to die, maybe. But here's the kicker. He used to be your dad's partner. Silent one. Before the company was officially founded. I froze. Partner? My dad said he built it solo. Yeah, well, Marcus sighed. Your dad lied. The drive to Bear Lake took 4 hours. It was the kind of place where cell service fades into the trees and the roads stop pretending to be paved. Marcus gave me the exact coordinates, written on the back of a napkin with a side note. Don't spook him. He spooks easy. It was early evening when I pulled up. The cabin looked like something out of a survivalist fantasy: log siding, rusted generator, chimney coughing out thin trails of smoke. A canoe leaned against a stump. No car. No signs of life, except the faint creak of a porch swaying in the breeze. I knocked once, then twice. The door opened just enough for a weathered face to peek through. Eyes like burned-out headlights. Unshaved. Thin. Daniel Rhodes, I said. He didn't speak, just looked at me like I was a bad memory dragging itself up the driveway. I need to talk about 1998. His shoulders tensed. Slowly, he opened the door. The inside smelled of old wood and canned soup. Maps and notebooks were stacked everywhere, labeled with dates, acronyms, coordinates. A conspiracy theorist's den, only this one didn't feel delusional. It felt methodical. Documented. Lethal. Joseph Harowitz, J. Harrow, sat in a frayed armchair across from me and lit a cigarette with trembling hands. I thought he'd take this to the grave, he said hoarsely. But I guess even ghosts have deadlines. I leaned forward. You were partners? He nodded. Back when it wasn't Rhodes Mechanical. It was just 2 guys with a truck and military clearance. Military. He explained it slowly. They were both subcontractors for a defense materials handling program in the late 80s. Hazardous waste, surplus containment, decommissioning fallout sites. Harrow was the contact. My father, the logistics brain. Then came 1994. A private contractor offered triple the payout for off-ledger disposal. No questions. No returns. They said it was obsolete tech, Harrow muttered. But the barrels we buried outside Galloway, those weren't government-issued. They were black market. Biohazards, maybe worse. I swallowed hard. You knew this. And still did it. I wanted out, he said. Your father? He wanted to scale up. So I sold him my half in 97. Took the payout. Changed my name. But I made him agree to one thing. He handed me a yellowing page. It was a handwritten clause, dated and notarized. In the event of my death, or if legal action is pursued against either party, Daniel Rhodes, son, is to be notified and granted access to all Harrow Materials files. I made him name you, Harrow said, because I knew Greg would bury it. Your old man had a conscience, just enough to know it might come back, but not enough to do anything. I stared at the paper. My name. In ink. From decades ago. Why me? Because you weren't like them. Then he handed me a USB stick. Everything. Photos. Coordinates. Names. If you open this door, Daniel, it won't shut again. I sat there, frozen. I hadn't come for power. I came for truth. But what Harrow gave me felt like a loaded weapon pointed straight at my family name. As I got up to leave, he said one last thing. Your father didn't hate you. He envied you. You walked away. He never could. I didn't drive straight home. I took the long way, through winding mountain roads, past forgotten gas stations and shuttered diners, letting the weight of the USB stick burn a hole in my pocket. It wasn't just information. It was an atom bomb. One that could take down everything my father built. One that could destroy the last threads of a family already tearing apart. I finally pulled into my driveway just past midnight. There was a car parked out front. Black. Government plates. I killed the engine and sat in the dark for a full minute before stepping out. The man standing on my porch looked like he'd been waiting for hours. Mid-50s, salt and pepper hair, dark trench coat, the kind of guy who never introduced himself with a first name. Mr. Rhodes, he said, holding up a badge with just enough light to read it. Special Agent Callahan. Environmental Crimes Unit. The breath left my body. I'd like to ask you a few questions about your father's contracts in the 1990s. I opened the door and let him in. He didn't sit. Just stood there, scanning the room like it might explode. We've been revisiting several dormant investigations. One of them involves a company your father had ties to, Harrow Materials. I kept my face neutral. We've been unable to locate primary witnesses, and most of the physical evidence was destroyed in a fire. But recently, someone leaked an anonymous tip, a photo, and a name. Yours. My blood ran cold. I don't know who sent it, he continued, but the metadata traced back to a cabin outside Bear Lake. Ring any bells? I didn't answer. We believe your father facilitated the illegal disposal of restricted materials. We also believe several deaths in the Galloway area may be linked to exposure from that site. Cancer clusters. Birth defects. We're reopening the case. He finally looked at me directly. If you have anything at all, now's the time to come clean. Before this gets political. I was about to answer when headlights flared through the window. A car pulled into my driveway. It was Greg. He stormed toward the porch, fist clenched, tie askew, looking like a man who'd just read something he wasn't supposed to. What the hell did you do? He barked. You've been digging into Dad's files? Meeting with that psycho hero? Callahan turned slowly, eyebrow raised. You must be Gregory Rhodes. Greg's mouth clamped shut. Then he did something I'll never forget, he smiled. Agent Callahan, he said smoothly, I think my brother's been under a lot of stress. He's been saying some strange things lately. Claims Dad was covering up government crimes. He's even gone through some old documents that were sealed for legal reasons. He was selling me out, playing the martyr while painting me as unstable. Callahan looked back at me. Is that true? I could have denied it. I could have played it safe. Instead, I reached into my coat and set the USB on the table. Everything you're looking for is on here, I said. But if you want the rest, you'll need a warrant. Greg's face turned gray. Callahan gave a thin smile. Oh, we're already working on it. And just like that, the balance shifted. Greg stormed out. Callahan pocketed the drive. And I stood there, realizing something terrifying. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about survival. It hit the headlines 2 days later. Local construction giant tied to decades-old toxic dumping scheme. New evidence links Rhodes Mechanical to Galloway environmental disaster. And then, the name that changed everything. Founder's son blows whistle on father's secret history. They used my face right next to the Rhodes Mechanical logo. Black and white. Cropped from a photo taken at a charity event 3 years ago. I looked like a deer caught in Legacy's headlights. Greg called me 37 times that day. I didn't answer once. Instead, I sat in my office, our father's old office, and watched as the world reacted. Emails exploded. Investors withdrew. One supplier sent an actual cease and desist letter, citing reputational risk. The board called an emergency session. Greg made his move. He's unstable, he shouted across the conference room, slamming his fist on the table. He's dragging this company into the grave to make himself feel important. No, I said calmly. I'm doing what Dad never had the courage to do, tell the truth. He's not thinking clearly. Greg snapped. You saw what he did. He gave confidential files to the feds. He's got no business running this company. I stood up, slow and steady. Let me be perfectly clear. The files weren't confidential. They were criminal. And if you think covering this up makes you a better leader, you're already the kind of man Dad turned into. Silence. Then the chairman, an old friend of Dad's named Evers, cleared his throat. Effective immediately, Daniel's role as CEO is under review. The board will appoint interim leadership while we investigate. Greg smirked. I walked out without a word. But the story wasn't finished. Not even close. That night, I got a call from Brooke, my father's former assistant. The one he'd fired quietly in 2010. Said she was too curious. I read the article, she said. And I have something. Something you'll want to see. I met her the next morning at a quiet diner on the edge of town. She slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a list. Names, dates, payments, and something else, a note in my father's handwriting. If this ever comes back, Daniel's the only one who can fix it. I looked up at her, heart pounding. Brooke nodded. He left you the company not to protect it, but to clean it. And just like that, I knew what I had to do. The audit began the next morning. I hired a forensic accounting team, 2 professionals out of Denver, one of whom used to work for the IRS. Their job was simple: dig up everything my father buried. Bank statements, off-book payments, falsified invoices. Every skeleton in Rhodes Mechanical's closet. I wanted the rot exposed. Greg called it corporate suicide. He told the board I was sabotaging my inheritance out of resentment. But he didn't see what I saw in those documents. He didn't read what my father wrote. Daniel's the only one who can fix it. That sentence stayed with me, haunted me. Why name me in the will, if not to repair something? Why not Greg, the golden boy? The mirror image of our father? Because I wasn't the image. I was the reckoning. By the end of week 1, the auditors uncovered $400,000 in slush fund transfers labeled community incentives. But none of it reached community projects. All of it went to a numbered holding account in Nassau. The signature on the authorizations? Gregory Rhodes. I confronted him in the warehouse. Just us and the dust and the sharp smell of motor oil. You stole from the company, I said. I covered expenses, he snapped. Legal buffers. You think people just hand over permits and overlook zoning violations out of generosity? You bribed them. He didn't deny it. It's how Dad operated, he said with a shrug. I just continued the playbook. That's when I realized Greg wasn't corrupt by accident. He was bred for it. I fired him on the spot. Sent security to remove his access cards. Froze all accounts. He fought like a trapped animal, promising lawsuits, revenge, full-blown war. But I didn't flinch. I'd already started preparing for what came next. Then the real bombshell dropped. Aunt Linda showed up at my door, face pale, lips pressed in a line that screamed regret. Daniel, she said, there's something you don't know. About your mother. I blinked. What about her? She was the one who first met Harrow. Before your father ever did. She was working for a chemical supplier. Harrow came through needing disposal contracts. Your mother introduced them. She was involved from the start. My stomach twisted. No, she couldn't have it. She tried to pull out when she got pregnant with you. She begged your father to walk away. That's when the first site burned down. I felt like the floor dropped beneath me. She told him if he didn't stop, Linda continued, she'd take you and leave. That's why he married her in a rush. That's why he changed the company name. He buried everything and made her promise never to speak of it. I sat down slowly, trying to breathe. Why now? I asked. Because she called me this morning, Linda said, eyes wet. She's ready to talk. She was waiting for me on the porch, wrapped in a shawl she used to wear when I was a child. The one that smelled like lavender and clean linens. Her hair was tied back. Her eyes, the same gray as mine, were rimmed with exhaustion. I was hoping you'd come, she said softly. I sat down across from her, my hands clenched together. Tell me the truth. All of it. She nodded, like she'd rehearsed this moment for years. I met Joseph Harrow in 1986. I was working at a chemical supplier in Davenport, handling scheduling, compliance files. He came in with a falsified EPA license and a very real check. We were all desperate for contracts. She looked out at the road as she spoke, like watching the past replay itself. Your father was subcontracting for state waste removal. Harrow needed a logistics man. I made the introduction. You knew what they were doing? I asked. I didn't, at first. But I knew it wasn't clean. Her voice trembled. Then I got pregnant with you. And everything changed. I wanted out. I begged your father to stop. He promised me he would. And the fire? She flinched. It wasn't an accident. My chest tightened. You started it? She shook her head. No. But I knew it was coming. They were planning to torch the Galloway site to erase inventory. Some of it had started leaking. Your father made the call, but I found out the day before. I drove there. I tried to warn the night manager. Jimmy Renner. My heart skipped. Terry told me Jimmy got sick. Then vanished. Her eyes filled with tears. I tried to stop it. But I was too late. The fire spread before I could get him out. Your father showed up afterward. Said it was handled. I felt sick. So you stayed quiet. She nodded. He told me if I talked, they'd charge me too. And Harrow? He disappeared. Changed his name. Went off the grid. She looked at me then. Really looked. I'm not proud of what I did. But I protected you the only way I knew how. I tried to steer your father toward legitimacy. I begged him to leave Greg out of it. But she paused. You were the only part of him that didn't follow his footsteps. Silence fell between us, thick with all the words we'd never said. I should have told you sooner, she whispered. I nodded, unable to speak. The betrayal wasn't just my father's anymore. It was hers, too. But it wasn't cold. It was scared. Human. Wounded. She reached into her shawl and handed me something. A photo. My father. Holding me as a baby. Smiling. Not posed, candid. Happy. He loved you, she said. In the only way he knew. I stared at the image, wondering what that version of him had dreamed for me. And wondering if, somewhere deep down, he always hoped I'd be the one to tear it all down. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday. Federal Oversight Committee, Environmental Crimes Division, Downtown Courthouse, 9th floor, glass-paneled room packed with microphones and men in suits who smelled like litigation. A public session. Cameras. Reporters. Live transcripts. They wanted a fall guy. I came as a witness. I wore a dark suit, my father's watch, and a silence I'd been carrying since childhood. The lead prosecutor, a woman named Ramos, started gently. Mr. Rhodes, can you confirm you are now the acting CEO of Rhodes Mechanical? Yes, I said into the mic. Can you tell us what led you to uncover evidence linked to the Galloway dumping site? I told them everything. The red file, Harrow, the USB, the handwritten clause that named me. I didn't flinch. I laid it out, piece by piece. The bribes, the slush funds, the chemical contracts sealed with untraceable checks, and the cancer clusters no one ever investigated. When I finished, the room was dead silent. Ramos leaned forward. And what do you believe your father's intent was in naming you as CEO? My throat tightened. To clean up the mess he didn't have the strength to face. She nodded. Then came the twist. Your brother, Gregory Rhodes. He's submitted a separate statement. One that claims you fabricated evidence to seize control of the company and destroy its reputation. He's requested immunity in exchange for cooperation. A chill ran through me. Greg, of course. Do you wish to respond to that allegation? I leaned forward, slow and steady. My brother doesn't want the truth. He wants the illusion of legacy. But if the cost of protecting that illusion is denying the damage we've done to real people, then it's not legacy. It's a lie. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I said nothing, just walked to my car, feeling like I'd stepped out of a furnace. That night, I got a call. Blocked number. It was Greg. You think you're righteous? He hissed. You just tanked our father's name. For what? Closure? Validation? I stayed quiet. I swear to God, he said. If I go down, I'll take you with me. No, I said calmly. You'll take yourself. Then I hung up. Later, I received an email from the DOJ. Your testimony has triggered a secondary investigation into classified dumping contracts tied to other companies. This wasn't just about Rhodes Mechanical anymore. It was bigger, deeper, contagious, and my name was the match that lit the fuse. The verdict didn't come in a courtroom. It came through email, press briefings, and long, technical documents that buried the truth beneath legal jargon. But the message was clear. Multiple companies were implicated. Fines were issued. Rhodes Mechanical was listed as a cooperating entity. My cooperation spared the company from federal seizure, but not from public backlash. Our stock plummeted. 2 senior board members resigned. Greg? He fled the state. I heard rumors he tried to secure a consulting deal in Nevada under a shell company. It didn't last. The DOJ froze his assets. His immunity request was denied. I never saw him again. As for me, I stepped down. I held a final press conference, thanked the employees who stayed, and announced a full rebranding of the company. Rhodes Mechanical would dissolve. A new entity would rise in its place, smaller, ethical, community-centered. I named it Ashfield Works, after the town where my mother grew up, where people still believed in honest labor. Before leaving the old office for good, I walked into my father's study one last time. The red file still sat on the shelf where I had returned it. I opened it, not to read, but to look. The photograph, the letter, the rusted key. I kept the key, not as a token of guilt, but as a reminder. Some doors should stay locked. Others need to be kicked open. My mother and I started speaking regularly. Sometimes she'd bring over old photo albums. Sometimes we'd just sit on the porch, not saying much at all. I was scared you'd hate me, she said one night. I did, I replied quietly, but only because I needed someone to blame. She reached for my hand. You turned out better than any of us deserved. Maybe, maybe not. But I knew this much. I wasn't my father. I didn't run from the truth. I didn't bury it in contracts and cement and ash. I faced it. And from that wreckage, I built something new. Final note. Legacy isn't what we leave behind. It's what we clean up, what we admit, what we choose to fix even when no one else will. My name is Daniel Rhodes. And this is how I became the man my father never believed I could be, by becoming nothing like him.